Hey guys, it's Baban again, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of a tutorial because my tablet glove is a little bit kind of stretched out and manky, and yesterday it finally decided to kind of rip and tear at the bottom here, so we're going to make a new one. Okay, so first of all, what we're going to have a look at is the type of fabric you need, and then we're going to look at how the gloves are put together and what sort of variants we can do with them. Then we're going to go over how to make a little base for us to use to cut our shape out. Then we're going to go over starting to sew the pieces together and cutting them out, and how to leave a little bit of a seam around the edge so that it's not too tight. Going to go around sewing all the different parts and the sort of stitching that you need on them, and put the entire things together and compare the new one I've made to my old one like this. So here we go. It is kind of like really manky. I don't know if you guys can see that. All the elastics kind of stretched out and trying to escape on the inside. It's not very nice. So I've been out into the outside and purchased some Lycra. Now, this stuff is kind of thin. It stretches like upways and acrossways. It stretches like just all over the place. So it's going to fit on my hand and kind of fit quite snugly onto it. And it's going to be kind of stripy and doofy looking. But yeah, what you want is something quite nice and smooth. You don't want anything that's going to irritate your hand too much. This stuff that I got was called Lycra. You can probably get a little bit of it easy. This whole lump of it was about £8 something for me. You can probably get it online quite easily in like whatever colour it is that you want. The name of another one you can get as well that's similar is Spandex, if that's something you'd prefer. I would maybe recommend going and actually checking it out and physically getting it, because like I say, a lot of the ones that I picked up were quite kind of rough and scratchy, or just had a little bit more of a rough texture than this one does. This one's like kind of silky smooth and nice, and it's going to feel nice against my hand, and it's going to go nice on my Cintiq as well. My Cintiq is lovely. Because when it comes down to it, the idea with these is that you want it on really snug and nice, so it feels like you're wearing nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. So what we're going to do is turn this into one of these. So I'm gonna go and get everything ready, and we're gonna have a look at it and how to make him. Okay, so I've got all my stuff together on my desk, so let me just put on my other glove and let's have a look at how that looks. Now, it's basically made of two pieces, so we've got the front piece on here and the back piece here, and we've got a seam that goes all the way down the side here and around the edge of the fingers, and then it splits here and comes over the top and over the bottom and then joins up down the side. Now, I thought an easier way to do this and a more comfortable way would to be to get rid of this seam down the side here and have it as just a flat piece. I'm going to also do a variant as well where it goes over this bit of the hand and kind of joins up there and leaves us like a little bit of a gap for the thumb to come out. So I've been and made a little bit of a prototype, so let's go and put that on so that I can show you guys out of my stripy material. And like I mentioned on this one, I've made it so that it goes over this way on my hand here and gives me a little bit of room for my thumb to come out and covers a little bit more of my hand so that it stays on a little bit more solidly. And I've also gotten rid of that seam down the side, so it's just one piece that folds over, and then the start of the stitching is just at the end of my little finger, and then it comes around the middle of them there, and around the middle of this one here, and over, and then we have a break there, another little bit of stitching here, and this bit down the side. So it gives us less stitching to do as well, and also gives us a nice smooth side that will be really nice on your screen or on your regular tablet. So what we want to do to get it like this without the seam down the side is to make it out of just one piece. So what we're going to do to get that is get ourselves a piece of paper like this that's big enough to fit your hand on, probably about A4 you can get away with, and I'm going to fold it in half so that we've got a split down the middle that's clear, that can be a fold over, that's going to give us two halves. Then I'm going to fold it back out again, and You guys should be able to see this seam down the middle. What I want to do is line the side of my hand up with that line just down here. And also my wrist if I can. Now it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect because again it is stretchy material and it'll go around your hand. And because we mainly want these two fingers, then we want to get our little finger lined up there and then just stretch them out a little bit so there's a bit of a gap here so we get a better representation in the middle so that we've got room to sew around them. I am also going to be going around the rest of my hand as well. So I'm just going to grab my pencil and go around the edge of my hand here. And like I mentioned, don't worry if it doesn't quite line up with that seam down the middle. Just going to go around the rest of my fingers so I can see where they are. Going to get down the side of my hand here and my thumb and back around to my wrist and down. There we go. And like I say, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. If you guys can see that now, you can see that it almost comes to the edge of that line, that seam down the middle, and that's close enough, that's okay. So then what we can do from these lines that we've got is go and mark out where we want this to go. Now you can either make it like the first glove that I had, like this, where it's just the two fingers and then it comes across the hand like that. It's two fingers here and then down this way, just down to below the thumb there. Or we can do it where it comes across from these and joins up just around there. The side of the thumb gives us a little bit of bit that joins up there and then a gap around the thumb. Sorry, the drawing's quite scribbly. I am not left-handed. So pick which one of those you want and go and draw it onto this single-sided base that you've got. So once you've got that down on the one side, whichever side you prefer, then you want to just pull this seam over so that we've got it now double-sided. So we've got a guide on this side, but when we cut through it, we're going to have both sides as well, and we're not going to cut anywhere down this seam. And before we start cutting, what I want to do is just put a little bit of a seam on, because this is just going to be our hand when it's flat 2D, but because our fingers kind of got a little bit of thickness and so is our hand, we want to get a little bit of a gap so that we can add it on and it's going to stretch and wrap around. So I'm just going to go around the edge of these that I've drawn a little bit and give ourselves a little bit more of a seam. This, I'm going to pull it in a little bit more in between the fingers. And when we get to these open bits here, I'm going to bring it in a little bit more again, because with those, we're just going to be folding them over. We're not going to be sewing them together. But where we are sewing them together, then I'm going to leave a little bit more of a gap. I'm going to try and make it a little bit bigger just around the side of my hand as well, because there's going to be a bit more depth to it there, down this last bit. And we don't want to make it too close at the wrist either, because again our wrist is going to get a little bit wider. When I do this as well, I'm also going to give myself a little bit extra material just at the bottom so I can figure out if I want to make a cuff or anything on it. Now we've got our base and also a little bit extra of a seam all the way around. So what I'm going to do is go and cut around the pink lines that we've done all the way around the edge. And try not to underestimate just how much space you do actually need for your hand when you put it inside a glove like this. Okay, and there we go. So we can see I've cut this out with one side. We've got a seam around the edge that's a little bit extra so that we get room for something that's 3D, our hand to go inside it. And then, since we've put our two sheets together, we can unfold it and we're going to get a single piece that we can work from. And I just want to go over this again, and I'm going to mark it out with a red pen so that you guys can see it a little bit easier. We've got a few places where we want to leave gaps and not actually sew together. So I'm just going to make a note so you guys can see it. We're going to have our 2 fingers in these, and then we're going to have a gap for these 2, and then we're going to have a sewn bit down here so that it sticks to that part of our hand, and then a gap again for our thumb. So we want to sew along these bits here and up there, and then those 2 will come together, and then along that piece there. So those are the only bits of sewing we're going to have to do. Oh, along with that piece at the bottom as well. So it's only really 3 pieces of sewing, so it's not too much once it's folded together. And we'll have a nice glove. So next, we want to get the material to go and pin this to. Okay, so now I've gone and got my fabric here. And what you want to do, especially if you got a patterned one, is just go and see how you kind of want it to sit on your hand. Now with this one, I think I'm going to go for maybe trying to get that stripe on my knuckles like that maybe, and have the rest of the stripes kind of down my arm wherever they end up falling, or however many I end up having, however long I want it to be. So with that, I should have a little bit of room. It's a bit awkward since it's diagonal, but if I have it on my hand there, it'll come down there, then I should have enough room for it to fold over again and for me to have the other side of the pattern on it. So I'm going to pull out something flat, just my calendar that I've got hanging about from the calendar that I made last year, and I'm going to sit it just on top of this so that it is fairly flat to where I can see it, and get my pattern out, see if I can get that to fit on it. Now you want to try and reduce the amount of stretching on this as much as possible. I know that there are papers available that you can iron onto stretchy material like this if you look for it, and it'll allow you to just iron it on and keep it as sort of a firm papery material that you can then go and cut your shape out of. I don't have any of that, so I'm just going to be trying as hard as possible to keep this flat, just on a nice flat kind of chunk. What I wanted to do was get that stripe kind of around where my knuckles are on that, and I'm going to go for more just horizontal stripes on this one, so that's going to be around about there. And this is also when you're going to want to get some pins to start pinning things in place. Then, like I said, I'm going to go and pin this to the paper while trying to keep it as flat as I can and in the correct position. So let's just go and put one either side for a start. Okay, so there we go. I've got it pinned down. Now, because I'm really awkward and I chose a black one, I'm going to have to go and use a white pen to go and draw my edges onto this. So I'm going to go right up next to my pattern and mark down with my white pen. Right, I've got everything marked out on this now. You might not be able to see the white because it doesn't really do a whole lot because it's a gel pen. There's like a little bit of residual on there, but you should be able to see on the white where I've got a little bit of a biro mark on there. So I'm going to take my pins out of this now so that I can see my pattern. I'm not sure if you guys can see it very well, but I do have my pattern down on there now. You should just about be able to see those lines there. And let's go and cut it out now from this. And like I mentioned before, I'm going to leave myself a little bit more room down for my wrist. And what I'm going to do to make it a bit easier is just cut it out in a big chunk like this, so I'm not going anywhere near those lines at the moment. I'm just going around it in a big old chunk so that I've got it just as a sheet that I can have separate from the entire piece of fabric that I'm working with at the moment, so that I'm not pulling that around all over the place. Okay, so there we go. I've got it cut out now, yay. Now, when we went and did this and put our pattern onto it, then we gave ourselves this little bit of a gap just between the red and the edge of it, so that we've got the place that we can go and have a little bit of a gap and do our sewing down the edge of this line. So that's going to be all these lines that we've put down right now is where we're going to be doing our sewing. But to give us a little bit of structure, we can't go and cut along those lines. We want another little bit of a seam just away from it slightly. So what I'm going to do as I go and cut around is just leave another little bit of a gap. So if we have a look at it on these white pieces, then I've got where I've marked out my seam along here. Then we're going to add just a little bit extra of one, and we don't want it too big, but we also don't want it so small that it's going to fray. So I'm just going to go and trim this down with a little bit of extra space around the lines. And I'm going to leave a little bit more around the wrist because, like I say, I'm not really sure what I want to do with it, so I'm just going to leave it quite open and flouncy at the moment like I did on the previous one, and then I'll be able to do what I want with it later. And you can go and edit these later and trim them in a little bit more once you've done your sewing, so don't worry if they're a little bit too big, that's fine. It's easier to go and trim off a little bit more than it is to make an entire new glove because you've cut it too short. Okay, so I've got my pattern now, and then what we want to do next is get it onto the inside like this. And I probably should have mentioned before, my pen kind of leaks through so I can see it around the edge on the inside of this. This is going to be the inside, so what we want to do is let's flip it so that we've got the front upwards like this, and then we want to fold it over so that the outside is then on the inside, so that we can go and start pinning the two pieces together and get the fingers bits up the top together like this. And it is looking a little bit chunky at the moment. It will start to come down a little bit more once I start putting my pins in. Okay, so now what you've got to do is get your pins again and start going around these seams and putting them in just inside where we've got our seams that we've drawn on. So I'm going to go and do that with mine. Okay, so here we go. I've gone and pinned mine together, and depending on how you've pinned it, if you're very careful, don't try this at home, kids, you might be able to just about get it on, to try it, to see how it's feeling, and I can just about squeeze my hand in it like that. Now it's a little bit tight on the fingers at the moment because I've pinned it slightly inside where we've drawn our seams on, so that I'm still going to be able to sew around them without these pins getting in the way. But you can see this little bit here, I want to go and cut down a little bit further because the webbing in my hand is around down here. And with adding that little bit extra on for the seam, then it's left us with a little bit more of a gap. So what I'm going to do is just go and slice this down here a little bit. And it's going to come to a little bit above that because I still want a little bit of room for it to go around my hand. So take it back off, and I probably would try and do this if you can. If you don't want to do it with the pins on, if you're scared of poking yourself, then you can just put in a few little tacked bits where you just put a few little crosses of thread that you sew on just to hold it in place that you can take off later. So I'm going to flip this to where I can see it, and I'm just going to do a little bit of a slice in here. What you can do as well when you sew this is, because the bits that you're sewing aren't really too big, we're going to go like around half of this finger and around that finger, and then it's going to stop by there, so we've got a gap for the rest of our fingers. Then if it's not quite in the right place for you, then you can always go and sew it a little bit more or take it out and re-sew it. But I'm happy with the way that's going at the moment, so we're going to get started with the sewing.
Okay, so now this is me just stitching that first little bit right by the end of the little finger, and you can see I'm just doing a little running stitch on that, which you can easily do by hand, so don't worry too much if you don't have a machine. And now there it is with it all sewed around the fingers. You can see there is just a little bit of running stitch going up it, and you can also see that bit there. I haven't sewed all the way down. I've left a little bit of a space just for the webbing on my hand, so don't sew that all the way down, because otherwise it's just going to scrunch up and irritate you and be kind of painful after a while, especially when you're moving your fingers around in it. If I try it on, you can see I've sewed it a little bit closer inside of those lines that I've done, just because I think it's going to fit me better. And there's quite a lot around the edge at the moment of extra space, but you can see that it is fitting my hand quite well. But I'm just going to be trimming off those extra little bits around the edge later, so that when we turn it inside out so that we can wear it, that it is going to be nice and comfortable and not too bunched up. Then we just need to go and sew down these two bits at the side to finish it off. And I'm just going to be doing that with the same running stitch that I've used to go around the fingers, just to tie these two sides together.
Okay, so now I've gone and finished these off, and I've done all the sewing on this one just around the top of it, and like I mentioned, I've just done a little bit of running stitch along here, which I wouldn't really do because it can be a little bit too tight on your hands, but you can see here that if I grab it here, then it doesn't really stretch very much because it's got that sewing in it now just around the edges of that opening. You can do it like that if you want. It won't be as bad if you've done the other sort of style of glove where it doesn't connect in between your first finger and your thumb. But you can see it will stay there, but it won't really stretch as much. It gives you a lot less stretch because it's sort of stuck at that kind of amount of stretch with that sewing on it. But like I mentioned, if you've got a machine, then it would be much better to do a zigzag stitch over these bits where you're going to have your fingers and your thumb sticking out, and also along the bottom of the wrist there if you want to sew that as well, so that it's still going to maintain that stretch. So that's the one that I've made. Let me just show you guys my other prototype one as well that I actually kind of prefer. I kind of prefer this one. I guess I've got two of them now. But if I try this one on, then you can see on this one I haven't really bothered sewing it along here because of the material. You might not necessarily have to sew it. You can see on this one it's just been cut off, and it doesn't really give me any trouble. It doesn't fray very much, if at all. So depending on the fabric you get, it might be okay. When you look in the shop, if you get it from a shop, then maybe see what the cut edges of it are like. See if it's going to be fraying or not. You can see it's a lot better than the old one that I had. If I stick this other one, then yeah, you can see how you can pretty easily make yourself a glove, and it might take you a couple of goes to try and get it right. You know, you might do it the first time and then try and make another one, and the first one's better, like I did. You might prefer the first one you made, but yeah, there we go. There we go, some nice tablet gloves.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. I hope this helped. If it did, give us a like, share if you think it'll help someone else, and subscribe for new videos on Fridays. There'll be links down in the description to everywhere that I post stuff, as well as my commission information where you can get prints of things that I've already drawn. Lastly, here's some links to some similar videos to this one, and yeah, thanks for watching, lads. Bye-bye.